Good morning, good evening, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you might be doing. We wish to welcome you to the Silverlight Show. The Silverlight shines to illuminate that which lies hidden in darkness. For those of you joining us today, we welcome you in. There's been a long-going brain drain and economic drain off to other countries, and it's something we really need to address as a society. What is so attractive about places like China, India, Vietnam, and all those other areas that we would normally consider less than desirable? The fact isn't so much what they have as it is what we lack. There's an interesting historical precedent here. In World War II, when the Allies came into Germany, they stripped it bare. They took all of the manufacturing, all the scientists, every little piece of technology they could, and pulled it back to their countries. Now, this was devastating initially for Germany, but then they started getting money coming in from the United States aid, from World Economic Aid, and they built brand new factories, brand new infrastructure. They weren't dependent on coal anymore. They could now afford to import gas. They could generate electricity better. So realistically, the war left them in better condition. There's an anecdote that Winston Churchill commented on that when he was in Parliament in his 1950 to 1953 summer presidency, summer prime ministership. And he said, jokingly, it might be worthwhile going to the United States just to get their aid money. But that's the thing that we lack. This area that I'm in right now was built in the 60s and 70s. Late 60s, early 70s. And one of the things you'll notice that's different from a downtown core is there's no overhead power lines. That's right. Everything's buried under the ground. That's because it made sense at the time to come in and do it. And if you bury it, it's not in people's way and they tend to forget about it. But that also means to change everything, instead of everything being on overhead power lines, now you're talking about a big dig. And if I could take the camera and just point a little bit that way, and I can show you where they completely dug up everybody's front lawns to put in new sewer and water mains and everything. It's an expensive project to do. And this is a relatively young city, like I said, 60s and 70s. If you look at somewhere like New York City, they've got sewer lines they don't even know where they lead. Things have been ripped up and rebuilt and not properly documented for almost 2-3 centuries. The old joke about there being alligators in their sewers might not be incorrect, because they don't know everything that's down there. They have maps, they have all sorts of things, but they're going down all the time blind. So when you look at it from a company's point of view, yes, you are hiring workers at a cheaper rate, which is attractive, but you're also getting brand new infrastructure. China, India, all these places are building brand spanking new industrial complexes that are wired for the 2000s. Not for 1960, not for 1940. The trunk infrastructure, the power generating infrastructure, it's all brand new. It can handle their requirements. Meanwhile, here we are clinging on to century-old cities with God knows what that's been jury-rigged into their architecture, and it's a lot of work to change ourselves for the modern day. We've had a peace dividend by living undisturbed for so long, and it has paid off. We'd have enjoyed a long, long period of economic prosperity. But we have to look at it. We've suffered by not improving our infrastructure. Yes, we've added more generating capacity. Yes, we've added more capability to it, such as internet over the phone lines that we have. But those phone lines are the ones Alexander Graham Bell invented, the 2 wire lines. Unless you actually have coax into your house, that's what you're using. It's technology from the 1890s. It can handle data, it can handle the internet, but it was never designed to do that. Whereas if you're in China and you want to attract a new business person, you say, okay, here, This is where we're going to build your factory. And it's going to have brand new T5, T6, whatever it is, connection. There's a dedicated hydroelectric dam down the corner, and we have a nuclear generator going in here. There's fresh sewer systems that, everything is perfect, made to order. Why wouldn't a company go for that? It would be like me telling you you have a choice. You can rebuild this old house or you can move into a brand new one. Most people are going to move into the brand new one. There are a few people who are into fixer-uppers, and there's a few companies that will be interested in that, but most companies want to spend as least money as possible when they get into a project. So this is why so many jobs are fleeing overseas. It's just cheaper and better. That's why when you pick up the phone and you call, you get somebody with an accent. Not only because we have many immigrants in our countries, but because back home, it just makes utter sense for them to use the infrastructure that they have, or rather that they don't have. Imagine if I gave you a computer from the 1970s. Some of us older people could figure it out because we've worked on it before, but most people would look on it like the relic that it is. The stuff that was flying on the space shuttle was so antiquated. And the problem with something like that, the space shuttle, is that it's so complex. Everything you change changes the weight, changes aerodynamics, etc. Well, it's the same with the city. It's the same with an industrial complex. If you go in with the idea to change it, there's only so much you can change until you get into millions and millions of dollars of a rebuild. Because you're still dealing with the same sewer lines, the same power lines, the same everything. But politicians don't want to commit to infrastructure because they know they have 4-year terms, and during that 4 years, they don't know whether they're going to be there at the end of those 4 years to cut the cord and get the press and say, this was my vision. It's selfish, but at the same token, you can understand it. How many projects did the previous president get to wave his hand and cut the red ribbon on that he had nothing to do with? A whole lot. Now, that's not to say he didn't initiate anything, but I'm just saying that's what you have to think of when it deals with politicians. There's no political will to renew our infrastructure. Yes, they'll pave the highways, they'll shut them down for construction to keep them going, but the highways themselves, they are also critically out of date. They need to be ripped up and rebuilt, but people won't stand for the inconvenience. Every summer when they rip the roads up wherever it might be, and if you look carefully down the corner, you might be able to see some spots right about here where they've ripped up and rebuilt it. And everybody says, oh, they're building, that's construction again, slows everything down, blah, blah, blah. But that's the kind of major overhaul we have to start making in North America. Because if we don't, we're literally going to be left in the dust. So, what would you rather? Continue to be left behind by all these people who have no infrastructure and can build up from the ground, just like Germany after World War II? Or would you rather that we started planning for the future? Maybe not for my future. I'm middle-aged, I'm getting up there, but I don't mind the idea of building so that our children can have a better future. It's incredibly selfish not to be thinking of that future. They say children are the future. Well, it's time that we started making sure that we provide for our children, not just our own children, not just making sure they're taken care of, but also making sure they have the infrastructure that they need. We had a situation with this house, and they had clay pipes. That's right, clay pipes. And this whole block has clay pipes. Even in the 1960s and 1970s, that was weird. They had PVC pipes. But no, instead of that, it now costs $5,000 to dig up a small section and replace that clay with PVC. And this is an isolated example. Like I said, New York City, Manhattan, areas like that. God only knows what they would have to deal with to rip it up. But it needs to be done. People are already fleeing downtowns because you can only do so much with them. A place like IBM is never going to want to go to downtown Toronto or downtown Boston because, quite frankly, it doesn't meet their needs. Whereas somewhere like China or Bangladesh or Vietnam, that will make their needs. They can say what they want, and the city and the country will make it happen. Over here, we can't do that. And you know what? If you can't do it, you can't compete. If you can't compete, you don't get the jobs, and those contracts all go overseas. So ultimately, our economic future is in our hands, but it's something that we can affect. It's something we can do something about. It's time we as the people started demanding that something be done about it. Because if we don't, the alternative is an inevitable economic crash. It might not be this year, might not be this year, might not even be in 10 years. But sooner or later, we won't be able to get enough power. We won't be able to get sewer lines to carry stuff away. We won't be able to pick up the garbage, just simply because we didn't spend money now for what we knew we needed in the future. We wish to thank you for listening to the Silverlight Show. As always, a like, a share, and a subscribe are always welcome. And to everybody, we hope you have a great day.